And welcome back to Square Off. This time last year, she was a TV news anchor just down the street. Today, Kari Lake is a Republican candidate for governor, proud to be leading the Trump party. And she is sucking all the air out of a race with 5 top-tier candidates. Can Lake stay afloat until the first primary? Votes are cast a year from now. Our political insider panel stepping in. Christine Jones is an attorney, former GoDaddy executive, and a former Republican candidate for Arizona governor. Chip Scutari is managing partner of SNC Communications here in Phoenix. In a previous life, he was a Capitol reporter for the Arizona Republic. Best work he's ever done. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good to be
Good
here.
morning.
Okay, Christine, I will start with you. Kari Lake is the purest reflection of Donald Trump of any candidate I've seen out there, and it's working for her so far. What does that tell you about the party base?
Well, obviously, it says that Donald Trump still has the ability to influence Republican politics in the state of Arizona. Your earlier point about can she sustain it, I think, is the more important point. And, we see this happen in these races where people get in and they get a little bit of a bump, and then somebody else comes along and they get a bump. So, whether or not this, we're having this same conversation on this day next August is a different story. But it's really a little bit surprising because if this race is going to be about who's the Trumpiest Trumpster rather than what are you going to do when you become the governor, it's really unfortunate. So I hope once we get past the I'm the most conservative conversation, we can get back to what are you doing about the border and education and COVID and all of the things that are meaningful to the people in the state of Arizona.
And Chip, I've been having flashbacks to August of 2015, a month into Donald Trump's presidential campaign, and no one was giving him a chance in a crowded field. Compare, contrast. Is that flashback relevant today?
It's very relevant. I think Kari Lake is playing the Trump playbook to a T. It's great clickbait for mainstream media and for OAN and Newsmax. As we've seen and other gubernatorial candidates have tried, it's impossible to fact check crazy. So she's getting all the Trump love. And I'll give you 2 or 3 quick examples about Kari Lake. She tweeted in late July that Congressman Gosar is one of the heroes working hard to save the republic. Basically, if you believe that, she is your candidate. If you believe that patriotic tourists visited the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, she is your candidate. If you believe cyber ninjas are a legit operation and that this audit isn't a taxpayer-funded fraud and farce, she is your candidate. But right now, Christine knows this from being in the 6-way primary in 2014, she needs about 25% to win the primary, which could happen. So when I saw that reception of her at the Trump event, it said everything to me because people who are laughing at her don't understand the current state of the GOP and primary base voters.
And I do want to run down the other candidates. State Treasurer Kimberly Yee, Karen Taylor Robeson, a former member of the Board of Regents and a developer, Steve Gaynor, former candidate for Secretary of State, and Matt Salmon, former candidate for governor, one-time congressman, former ASU government affairs chief. Christine, if you're one of those other candidates, what are you thinking right now? Are you thinking just ride out the storm, or are you thinking I need to go where she is?
It's tricky. I think particularly for, say, Matt Salmon, who's won a Republican primary for governor before, or Kimberly Yee, who's won a statewide contest, they're probably flummoxed. They're probably thinking, how in the world did we get here? Which is why you see, I think, an IE, an independent expenditure committee on behalf of Salmon, already spending against Lake. But I think Chip and I obviously disagree on some things here. But what I do agree with him on is this: if you believe in a particular set of facts. So if you are a religious person about the audit, she's a really great standard bearer for you right now. But if you're not, if you're thinking more about education and spending and taxation and things like that, I think at some point you have to go look at Salmon and Gaynor and Yee. And Robeson is going to be really interesting too, because she's kind of the business candidate that we haven't seen before, right? Gaynor did win a primary for Secretary of State, so we've kind of gotten to know him. But I do think when Robeson gets in, the flavor of the race changes. I say gets in in fact, right? fullness after Labor Day, the race changes a little bit because then the conversation is going to have to be more substantive, I think, and I hope.
Bram, to your question. Okay. I was going to say,
Go ahead.
when Christine ran for governor in 2014, that primary seems like masterpiece theater compared to what we've seen so far. Really. And the quandary for these Republican candidates, and I know Matt Salmon and Karen Taylor Robeson, a lot of smart, quality candidates. The quandary they have is, man, Kari Lake has really thrown a fly into the ointment because we can't out Trump her. And we don't want to upset the Trump base. There's really right now, there's no lane for problem solver, pragmatic, pro business Republicans. We have plenty of issues in the state we're facing, but that's the quandary they're in. And Kari Lake has seized that lane. And for someone like Kimberly Yee, it's tough for her to grab that Trump mantle back. So that's what they're facing right now in the short term, at least.
Let's pivot to the state capitol. Republican lawmakers are calling on Republican Governor Doug Ducey to enforce a ban on mask mandates that apparently isn't law yet. Christine, I'll start with you. What do you make of Ducey's position here, issuing warnings about the ban, but not doing anything about it?
Well, I have to be a little careful because this is an area in which I disagree with him. But I think if you legislate and you sign executive orders for the purposes of making yourself look good for your next election, you always paint yourself into a corner. And that's exactly what's happened here. First, it was too much. Now it's not enough. Now we've got this in between where parents want masks and they're showing up for school board meetings. And we've been saying as constitutional conservatives all the time, push it to the local level, push it to the local. The local people know the most. They should be making the decision. And then we just randomly said, nope, sorry, the local people don't get to make the decision. So I think he's put himself in between a rock and a hard place. And at the end of the day, the parents are going to do what they want with their kids. The school boards are going to do it. They're going to end up in a big fight. In fact, I think Phoenix Union has a hearing in the case for their mask mandate today, if I'm not mistaken. And
on Friday, and in fact, the school boards have now sued the state over the ban.
Okay,
so
yeah.
That's going to play out over the next several weeks. Chip, I'll end this part of the discussion with you. How do you think this will all play with voters come the end of next August, next November? And granted, we don't know where the pandemic is going to be by then, but how will this response play?
I think it all depends on how severe the Delta variant continues to be. It's raging across the country and in our state. And I could tell from just from a personal perspective, earlier this week, I was at my 7th graders back to school curriculum night. And most of the parents, some of them want their kids to wear masks, others don't. Like Christine said, this is going to come down to a local decision between teachers, superintendents, and school boards. And we all just want our kids and the teachers to be safe. That's the bottom line. I think hopefully that common sense will play out in the coming months. But it's scary out there right now.
Okay. So I made a personal vow to try to end the show on high notes. And I'm going to start with you two. Christine Jones, tell us something good that happened this past week or that you just want to let folks know about.
Well, despite the COVID and the Delta and the Lambda and all of the things, we have had 6 families have a baby in the last 7 days. I guess we could call them COVID babies, but it's so exciting to celebrate new life in the midst of darkness. So congratulations to all those families. And I just think it's wonderful to just look at the faces of these little babies and think, oh, thank God that there's some good news out there.
Boy, you're making me warm all over. Chip, I'll end with you.
God, that was a good Ted Lasso moment there. I was going to bring an umbrella to say we have a monsoon and it's raining and it's cloudy and it's brought such joy to people's lives that the heat isn't so dreadful. And I know that's very basic, but the last 2 summers have been brutal. So when my wife and I and our kids look out and it's raining and it's cloudy, I think, okay, God is raining down upon us for a reason. This is great. This is wonderful. And that's my Ted Lasso moment for the week.
If you haven't watched Ted Lasso, you really got to. Christine Jones, Chip Scutari, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Take care.